My name is Marcus Tully, Marine for 9 years, and in all that time I never moved as fast as we moved on Tessera. We came down hot, 4 dropships in close formation, no recon pass, no orbital prep. Sergeant Okafor leaned over to me on the ride down and said, "I've done 100 of these and I've never once skipped the recon." I told him, maybe Command finally figured out recon just gives the enemy time to hide the good stuff. He laughed because that's what you do, you laugh on the way down. Corporal Diaz said if this turned out to be another grain depot like Cassandra 3, he was filing a formal complaint. In writing, illustrations. We were still laughing when the ramp dropped. The smell hit first. I want to be honest about that, because everything after gets harder to be honest about. And the smell was the one thing nobody can argue with later. It was the smell of a very large kitchen on fire for a very long time. And underneath it, something that didn't belong in any kitchen. The camp was called Voss. We didn't know that yet. What we knew was a perimeter fence 3 meters high, razor-coiled at the top, enclosing a flat gray compound the size of a small city, with long, low buildings laid out in grids, and guard towers, and between the buildings, things on the ground that from altitude had looked like debris, and from the ground did not look like debris at all. Okafor stopped laughing first, then Diaz. Then all of us, one at a time, the way a room goes quiet when someone says the wrong thing at a funeral, except nobody said anything, just stopped. The Caliph garrison at the gatehouse didn't put up much of a fight. There were 11 of them. Administrative troops, soft hands, to be east, the kind of soldiers who get posted somewhere, because nothing is supposed to happen there. Kuosa took 2 of them down before they got their rifles up. The rest threw their weapons over the fence and put their hands on their heads. And one of them, an older Caliph with gray crest plumage, started talking very fast in trade pidgin about quotas and authorizations and said, more than once, that he was just processing, that he'd inherited the schedule. I want to tell you I felt rage. What I felt was a kind of falling. The floor of the world dropping half a meter and nobody telling my legs. Diaz found the first ledger room. It wasn't hidden. That was the thing that stayed with me longest. It was filed, indexed, cross-referenced, intake dates and origin manifests and labor assignment codes, and at the bottom of each entry, a final disposition code that the overseer, when Okafor showed it to him, called resolution, like a customer service term. 3,211,406 entries, 6 years of intake. The earliest were from the Coraline Reach colonies. The Uating Settlements Command had quietly stopped getting supply. Formations from, one by one, starting 6 years back. We'd filed those as communications lapses. Someone had filed them as communications lapses for 6 years. Resettlement Camp Voss, the header on every record said. Agricultural Relocation Program, Tessera Processing Authority, operating under suzerain charter. There is a particular kind of quiet that settles over Marines when they understand, all at once, as a unit, that the joke is over and it is not coming back. We had that quiet for maybe 90 seconds. Then Okafor keyed his comm and said, in a voice I'd never heard him use, "Command, this is Ground 1. We need every recorder we have down here now." While we waited, I walked the rows. I'm not going to describe what was in the long, low buildings because you don't need me to, and because some things, once you put them into words, carry around forever. I'll say only this: there were intake tags still on some of them with names. Human names. Names like Esperanza, Whitcomb, and a kid's tag that just said, Theo, age 6 in handwriting, cause someone had run out of label printer ribbon and finished the batch by hand. I found out later, much later, on the carrier home, that one entry was missing a disposition code. Just 1 out of 3 million plus. The record showed an intake 6 years ago, a labor assignment to the processing kitchens, and then nothing. No resolution code, no closure. Her name was Reyes Okonjo, Corporal, Coraline Reach Colonial Defense Force 26 when they took her. She'd gotten out 14 months before we landed. Stole a hauler off a supply. Flew it through 6 systems on stolen fuel chits, and a recycled scrubber that should have killed her twice, and put herself, and a hand-copied transcription of 400 intake records into the hands of an Earth listening post on the edge of charted space. The post passed it up the chain, and the chain took it more seriously than anyone outside Threshold Fleet Command understood. Until we stood in camp, Voss with our own eyes. There was no investigation phase. People back home sometimes ask whether we verified things, whether the suzerainty got a chance to explain. There wasn't, and they didn't. And having stood in the ledger room at Camp Voss, I don't lose a single hour of sleep over the absence of an inquiry. What I learned later, from the carrier's operations briefings, was that the moment Reyes Oconjo's transcription was authenticated, cross-checked against the Coraline Reach manifests, against 6 years of communications lapses, against shipping lane traffic that matched, almost to the day, intake dates, Threshold Fleet was already moving. 340 warships, not toward Voss alone, toward every facility on a list her records had only partially mapped, and that Calith's own administrative network, once Fleet Intelligence got root access, in the first hour, 4 the suzerainty knew had been touched, filled in completely. 41 facilities, each running the same schedule, the same codes, the same quiet 6-year math. Our squad was on the ground at Voss for one reason. Voss was the largest, and Voss was the one Reyes Oconjo had escaped from, and someone in Fleet, I don't know who, and I never asked, decided that the first human boots back on that ground should be infantry. Not auditors, should be us. Should be people who could stand in those rows and be witnesses, not just collect data. We were still in the ledger room, recorders running, when the sky started to change. I'd seen orbital bombardment before. Controlled strikes, surgical, the kind that light up one building and leave the block around it standing. This wasn't that. Through the open roof of the processing administration block. Open for ventilation. Since the camp had never been built to withstand anything, I watched the daylight sky over Tessera fill with deorbiting fire. Not toward us. Away, the suzerain provincial seat 40 kilometers east. And toward the orbital shipyards beyond it, where Fleet Intelligence had confirmed 6 were processing transport vessels were under construction, scheduled for delivery in 8 months. Threshold Fleet didn't wait 8 months. The overseer with the gray crest plumage watched it with us. He'd stopped talking about schedules. He said, quietly, that the provincial seat housed 11,000 suzerain staff and their families, and asked, not begged, asked, in the flat tone of someone already calculating the answer, whether the strike differentiated between administrative personnel and military. Okafor didn't look away from the sky. Did your camp differentiate? The overseer didn't answer. He sat down against the wall of the ledger room. Among 3 million records of people his charter called agricultural relocations, and put his head in his hands, and didn't say anything else. We held Camp Voss for 6 days while Threshold Fleet worked through the cluster. Facility by facility, strikes timed to hit each site's administrative core during the Calith daylight cycle, so nothing burned in secret. 41 facilities. By the 3rd day, Fleet had recovered partial records from 19. By the 6th, all 41, cross-referenced into a single registry. Names where there were names, numbers where there weren't. On the 6th day, we loaded Reyes Oconjo's 400 hand-copied records, the originals, still in her handwriting, still creased from 14 months, folded against her skin during the flight that nearly killed her twice. Onto the carrier, to be filed alongside the 3 million we'd found at Voss, and the names recovered from the other 40. Diaz asked me, on the flight back up, whether I thought it was too much. 340 warships, 41 facilities, a provincial seat, shipyards under construction 8 months out. He wasn't arguing it was wrong. He just wanted to say the number out loud to someone. I told him I'd walked the rows at Voss, and I'd seen the tag that said, Theo, age 6 in handwriting because someone ran out of ribbon, and that I didn't think there was a number large enough to be too much, and that if there was, I hoped I never lived to see what it would take to reach it. He didn't say anything else. Neither did I. We just watched Tessera fall away through the viewport, the daylight still bright on it, the smoke from 41 facilities rising white and clean into a sky that from up there looked almost peaceful. The final tally listed 3,211,407 names recovered. 407th was Reyes Oconjo's own intake record, the one with the missing disposition code, the one she'd left blank by walking out of it herself. Every other name on that list, the disposition code now read, accounted for. That's the only word I ever needed for it. Not avenged, not punished, accounted for. Someone wrote their names down once to erase them, and we wrote them down again so they couldn't be erased. Twice, that's the whole of it. That's what 340 warships are for.